king sees a dream. Allah mentions this in in Surah Yusuf, verse 43. Listen to this dream. It's a very interesting dream. I'll interpret it for you, inshallah ta'ala. وَقَالَ الْمَلِكِ, the king says, it's not Pharaoh, because there was no Pharaoh in the time. I did some research. I was telling Naeem on the plane here. I was flying in this morning, and I was doing research on this topic. But I won't go into it because it's boring for you, not boring to me. But there was no Pharaoh at this time in Egypt. وَقَالَ الْمَلِكِ, the king says, إِنِّي أَرَى سَبْعَ بَقَرَاتٍ سِمَانٍ يأكلهن سبع إجاف وسبع سنبلات خضر وأخرى يابسات. The king says, I saw this dream. It's a really weird dream. He says that I saw 7 fat cows from ram's grief, big, hefty fat cows, and they were being eaten up by 7 skinny cows. This is a dream that I saw. Bizarre dream, but I saw this dream. And then he says, I saw 7 green ears of grain. If you see, look at grain, there's the top part, the end part, the grain at the end. He says, I saw 7 green ears, and then I saw 7 that were dry. So he saw 2 animals, or 2 types of animals, if you like, one fat, one skinny, and a skinny one eating a fat one. And then he saw 2 types of grain. One was green, and is lush, and one was dry. So he turns to his chiefs, Ya ayyuhal mala'u. In those days, people would interpret dreams for the kings. This is another history that I can go into about how sultans and leaders used to have people who used to interpret dreams for them, and used to try and practically predict the future for them. Because if you're a king and you're sultan, you want to make sure you make the right choices. Ya ayyuhal mala'u aftuni fi ru'yaya in kuntum lirru'ya ta'burun. Tell me the meaning of this dream if you can really interpret dreams. It's obvious that they weren't able to interpret a dream because the Quran tells us that none of them gave an answer. In other words, the Quran doesn't talk about them. They say, قَالُوا aḍgāth أَحْلَامٍ. They confuse visions. In other words, they're saying to the king, don't worry about it. It's just a hodgepodge. It doesn't make sense. وَمَا نَحْنُ بِتَأْوِيلِ الْأَحْلَامِ بِعَالِمِينَ. They confuse visions, and we do not know the interpretation of such dreams. We don't know what they actually mean. One of the Mufassirin says, very, very interesting here, and I want to share it with you. اعلم أنه تعالى إذا أراد شيئا هيأ له أسبابا. This is a theological point. When Allah wishes for something to happen, when Allah wills for something to happen, He makes asbab come into action. Asbab means means. If Allah wants something for you to happen for you, whether you like it or not, Allah will make the world work in such a way that that thing will happen for you. You planned everything. You're going to go to the airport on time. You booked a taxi. Sab kuch, you planned it all, and it just doesn't happen. You're like, Allah, I planned everything, and it doesn't happen. And sometimes the opposite happens. Allah makes it just happen. It just all works for you just like clockwork. When Allah wants something for you to happen, it happens. So Imam Razi says, here Allah is showing to us how He is going to take Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam out from the darkest of places, and He's going to elevate his status. So remember that in the story. Don't forget that when you see Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, there's all these events that are taking place behind the scene. Just like in your life, there are events that are unfolding in your life. You all got your own story to say or to write. You've all got your own trajectories in life. In the same way, Allah has always been involved in your journey. Always. So He says, Allah Ta'ala wants Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam to be freed. So Allah is going to make things happen. How is He going to make it happen? The person is going to remember that there's a friend of mine who is in prison, who told me about my dream, and eventually Allah will bring him out. But the way Allah brings him out also is very fascinating. Allah takes him out very, very easily on Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam's terms. You know what we learn from that? Have self-dignity. He didn't rush out of prison. We'll see in a second. He's like, I'm innocent. I'm going to do it my way now. You'll see this. There's this kind of humility in him, but there's self-respect. Nobody likes people who grovel. You see people groveling, sometimes politicians, other leaders, or mosque committee members sometimes groveling at somebody. It's not a good way to live. It's not muruwa in it. You should have self-dignity. Somebody wants to listen to you, they listen to you. If they don't want to listen to you, it's fine. Have self-dignity, have self-respect, self-worth. This is the way of the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam. So the king saw a dream, and it caused him so much anxiety. Even though his friends said to him, his people around him said, don't worry about it, it's not important. But he was like, nah, this dream means something. So he asked the dream interpreters what it meant, and nobody could understand it. They call it aḍgāth. The word aḍgāth comes from the word digth. It's the plural of digth. It basically means that, you know, when you crush wheat, you take out the good bits and you have all the bits left on the side, the skin. We call it chaff. We use a adage in English, separating the wheat from the chaff. You might have heard this, right? The good ones from the bad ones. The ones who are really good, and the ones who are average. So that's what it means here literally. So he says, it's just chaff. It doesn't mean anything. Don't worry about it. Bundle of waste material. But what happens is, our friend, the one who got released from prison, the one who is pressing the wine, وَقَالَ الَّذِي نَجَى مِنْهُمَا وَادَّكَرَ بَعْدَ أُمَّةٍ أَنَا أُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِتَأْوِيلِهِ فَارْسِلُونَ. The surviving prisoners, the one that survived from the two, he remembered Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam said to him that, you know, he interpreted my dream for me, so let me go to him and ask him about the interpretation of this dream. In other words, I know someone who might be able to help us out with this situation. So he goes to him. Look at the way he addresses him. Yusufu ayyuha siddiq. Yusuf, a man of truth. Remember in the previous lessons we talked about how Yusuf alayhi salam spoke to convicts, criminals, with respect. Remember I said this before? Look how that's been returned back to him. In other words, the ulama tell us, when you treat people with respect and dignity, that will come back to you, to give you purchase. If you look down upon people, you are bigoted, you're full of hate, you use authority that Allah has given to you, you misuse it, don't be surprised when it comes back to you in a negative way. Look at the way he's been addressed. Not Yusuf. Yusuf ayyuha siddiq. Subhanallah. So when you treat even the worst of people with respect and dignity, that person will inshallah one day return that respect back to you. But if you treat people and you infantilize them, you mock them, you tease them, don't be surprised tomorrow when that comes back and bites you. Don't be surprised. Yusuf ayyuha siddiq, a man of truth. What does he say to him? It's very interesting, by the way. He does something very, very interesting. I've been thinking about this myself. He repeats exactly what the king saw. Allah repeats the dream here again. Look at this verse 46. Aftina, tell me, في سبع بقرات سمان يأكلهن السبع إجاف والسبع سنبلات خذ وأخرى يابسات لعلي أرجع إلى الناس لعلهم يعلمون. There's a question here. Why on earth did Allah repeat the dream? We've heard what the dream was in the previous verses. This is how you read the Quran, by the way. Because Allah could have said, yeah, he told him about the dream that he saw. But Allah repeats the dream in the Quran that this prisoner is telling, or this ex-prisoner is telling Yusuf alayhi salam. Do you understand the question here? When you read the Quran, you read it with questions, by the way. Allah wants you to ask questions. So one of the answers that I found when I was doing some research is Allah's teaching us an important moral lesson, especially in a social media age where, you know, a few people misinterpret things or lie or don't tell the truth entirely. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us here, there's a subtle indication in the Quran, that when someone tells you to repeat something, or when someone tells you on a mission, or when you're retweeting something, in other words, or when you're sending a message on, make sure that the message you send is the exact same message that you were given. You know, we teach our children that when you tell them something, say to your grandparents, say as I told you. This is very, very important. So Allah is teaching us, it's an amana. When you're a messenger, when I'm transmitting something from you, from the Quran, it's a trust. This is why I was saying to Naeem, I write out everything before I come here. I literally type out everything. I bring my receipts with me. Because somebody might say, he's making it from his pocket. So I actually spend a day typing notes. Why? Because it's an amana. So when I'm passing the message on to you, it's an amana. When you're tweeting something or you're sharing something from somebody, it's a trust. So here, Allah is showing to us that this ex-prisoner, when he goes to Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, he's not adding anything extra to what the king saw and transmitted to him, nor is he taking anything away. Subhanallah. What a beautiful message in the Quran. Transmit things as they are. This is the ethics, the akhlaq of Islam. Even when it comes to our enemies, by the way. When we pass messages on that people we don't agree with, we don't misrepresent what they said. We don't kind of take a clip and misrepresent it. This is not the way of Islam. People might say to me, Maulana, will they do that? Maulana, they take a YouTube clip from so-and-so and they take a minute out and they misrepresent everything that he said. They don't give the context. That's what they do. That's their level of morality. We're supposed to rise up because our teacher is the Prophet ﷺ. Our teacher is the Prophet ﷺ, which he has told us to always represent the truth. So he compared this teaching in the Quran to the media of our age. Subhanallah. Which is superior? Wallahi, which is superior? Our ethics. Say as it is. Even if it goes against you, and then you can rebut it. This is what ulama used to do, by the way. When you read books, ulama, how long do I have? I'm going to stop soon. I don't want to take too much time. The ulama, when they wanted to refute someone that they disagree with amongst themselves, or even Christians, they would present their arguments first. This is what he said, this is what he said, this is what he said, this is what he said. This is what I've understood from what he said. Now, I'm going to respond to him. Subhanallah, what a beautiful way of debating. What do we have today? We have demagogues. You know what demagogues are, right? They misrepresent things. They say, Maulana Haroon said this, he said this, and therefore he's like this, and he's a deviant, and he's misleading people. Habibi, what did I say first? Tell the people what I said. Clarify with me what I said. Get the words correct before you want to refute someone. This is the akhlaq of our religion, our tradition. The Quran holds us as Muslims to a very high standard. Very, very high standard. This is where our success lies. So he explains the dream. How long do I have? Because I don't want to start the next section. I'm going to stop in the next 5 minutes because I've gone off. No, I'm going to stick to my time. Inshallah. No, it's okay. I'm very strict with timing. I'll stop in a few minutes, inshallah ta'ala. Next week, inshallah, I'll talk about what a dream actually means. But I want you to take these few lessons from here, because at the same time, while I want to go into the next section, I want to do justice to it, and I don't want to rush into it. Some of the things that we learned today, inshallah ta'ala, we've learned already. Number one, the most important one, is that when we want to present the truth, we should do it with integrity. Even people that we disagree with, even people that we don't like, even people that wish harm towards us, we represent what they've said truthfully, and then we challenge them. We challenge them. You wrote this, you said this, this is what I've understood from what you said, I want to challenge you on it. This is the dialogue that our ulama always did. You'll find this throughout the books. Imam Ghazali, one of our great imams that we read Fazal Amal and taken from his books were attacked. His books were burned in Andalusia. Did you know that? Muslims burned his books at one stage. That's how much hatred sometimes happens. Imam Abu Hanifa, there was a time where he wasn't even part of Sunnism for a few centuries. People attacked him. But then people saw the quality in his work. Sometimes after you die, after you leave this world, people see your work. Because sometimes you're ahead of your time. You live, Shah Waliullah Dehlavi was ahead of his time. Ibn Taymiyyah was ahead of his time. Ibn Arabi was ahead of his time. That's why people attack them, because they weren't able to appreciate, sometimes just raw jealousy. But sometimes when people die, people appreciate their legacy. So number one is when we transmit things, we should transmit it faithfully. Even people that we disagree with. Also, we treat people with respect and dignity, always. In this Lamak Musalla, we should have an usul. In every masjid, we should have an usul. Even people that we disagree with, people we might not get on with, we still address them. There might be people here who don't have a beard, who don't wear thobe, who might not even look so-called Islamic. We still treat them with respect and dignity. My own ustads, for example, Mufti Ikramul Haq, if you don't mind me mentioning his name, every person he meets, he treats them with dignity and respect. I've seen this in his life. Even though he's a great faqih, for example, even Mufti Inayatullah Sahab, he might disagree with you, he might tell you off, but he will treat you with dignity and respect. This is our way. Mufti Abdul Samad Sahab, same. Dignity and respect. Many of our teachers will do this. Right? It doesn't matter who you are, because they learn this from the Quran. Yusufu ayyuha Siddiq, the truthful one, because when he was in prison with them, he treated them, what did he call them? Ya sahibai sijn. Oh, my friends in prison with me. There was no othering. You know what othering means, right? Us and them. You, me and you, me and you. Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam didn't engage in that sort of dialogue. In the Quran, it's very fascinating. This is why you read Arabic very carefully and you read language very carefully. He didn't say, oh, you prisoners. That's not what he said. Can you see? Because sometimes people stand in front of people and say, you are all like this. He says, no, my friends in prison, we're all together here. He spoke to them in that way. He spoke to them with love. He spoke to them with guidance for them. And they felt that. So when the prisoner left, he remembered him. And the first thing he said to him, he didn't say to him, give me the answer to the dream. He said, Yusuf, ayyuha Siddiq. And the ulama say that first thing you say is an expression of your feeling towards that person. So the point I'm making here is, this is from our Sufi ethics, that we treat people with akhlaq, people with good character, we treat them with dignity and respect, no matter how they are or what they are like. That we leave that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't look into people's matters, we don't look into their personal lives, we don't humiliate people in public. This is not the way of our Prophets alayhi salatu wasalam. In fact, the way of our anbiya and our ulama is what? We conceal people's faults, we hide people's faults. People come to me with all sorts of problems under the sun, but it's an amana, it stays private. I don't need to go and tell anyone about it, I don't need to tweet about it, I don't need to mention it. We make dua for them, and those people, mashallah, they become better than me if you give them the space and the time that they need. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us true understanding of the Quran, and Allah bless us with the fahm of the Quran, and to act upon the Quran, and to bring Quran into this community, and to engage us with revelation, which is the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to make this musalla and the masjid and the projects that will come about successful bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Subhanallah bihamdi.